It is the calm before the storm. Good Tuesday evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at 6. I'm Chris Pisano.
And I'm Beth Ward. After a mostly mild winter, it looks like conditions are about to take a turn. Let's go right to meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff to see how big a turn that's going to be. Hey, Jacob.
Hey, hard Beth. Left or hard right?
Yeah.
Right down the middle.
Right down the middle,
yeah. So we are watching the chance for some wintry weather to move through Thursday, and it's looking like the storm, at least initially, starting out as all snow for us here in Western Mass, but pretty quickly we'll start to see sleet and freezing rain start to mix into the later afternoon and into the later morning into early afternoon Thursday, before we start to see things wind down just a little bit Thursday afternoon. Pick back up again Friday. Heavy rain, sometimes 1 inch to 2 inches with the total rain totals. And then we start to see that sleet and freezing rain still holding on Friday morning. So still a slick commute in some locations, winding up as a little bit of snow on the back side of this. So when we look at our travel impacts, the biggest travel impacts will be Thursday morning with some snow and sleet. I think that is going to be a very slick morning commute. And I also think Friday's morning commute will also be a bit tricky with some heavy rain falling and still some iciness to the north and west. As you look at our sleet and ice kind of graphic here, we're expecting some decent totals as you go into the Hampden County, a little bit more as you go into Franklin County and the Berkshires. So we have a lot to talk about with this system. Obviously the snow, the ice, what you can expect for the end of the week, those details in just a few minutes. Chris and Beth, back to you.
All right, Jacob, thank you. Now to a story you'll see only here on Western Mass News. A community in mourning as the victim from Friday's deadly fire in Springfield has been revealed and identified by his family as Bill Brown.
Now, we have learned that Mr. Brown owned a barber shop in the city for decades. Western Mass News reporter Audrey Russo spoke exclusively with his co-workers who say the city has lost a role model. She joins us now live with his story. Audrey?
We've been invited inside Bill Brown's House of Beauty here in Springfield, where you can see they've now set up a small memorial for Bill Brown, the man himself. We're told that this barbershop served as a home away from home for much of the Springfield community. Bill Brown's co-workers tell me they're going to continue his legacy of kindness in the wake of this tragedy.
Bill Brown's House of Beauty hums to life. The State Street Barber Shop accepting customers in the morning, bringing out the best in everyone who sits in the chair. But it's a tough morning for the other barbers, as they just lost the man who brought out the best in them.
I was a rookie at it at that time, and he really brought me into the business of knowing how to deal with people.
Barbers Daryl King and Monty Montgomery tell Western Mass News they couldn't believe the news Friday that Bill Brown died in a fire on Bristol Street.
I just fell to my knees. I couldn't believe it. And I asked the commissioner, is everybody out? He says it just doesn't look good.
All I could do is just put my head down.
Opening up the House of Beauty again, Monty and Daryl say is their way of keeping Bill's legacy alive.
You know, the holding the business down and being just as strong as he is.
And though the sign outside says Bill was a barber, the people inside say he was a mentor, a role model, family to the community.
He will help anybody, even if they needed a free haircut, he would give it to them.
Bill Brown, the family man who made the House of Beauty a home.
He was more than a teacher to me. He was a father figure.
He's like, hey, cousin, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's gentleman.
This gentleman was he was the best man I ever worked for. It's still hitting me. You know, I'm shocked that this happened and he's gone.
We're told that a memorial service for Mr. Brown is being planned for next week. In the meantime, we've reached out to the state fire marshal. They tell us they are still investigating the cause of that Bristol Street fire. Live in Springfield, Audrey Russo for Western Mass News.
Audrey, thank you for that live report. The coronavirus isn't just a health concern. It's also impacting families waiting to adopt children from China.
Western Mass News reporter Sarah Grinelli joins us in the studio with how adoption agencies, Sarah, are feeling the impact.
Well, Beth, the adoption process can already take months, even years. And with the coronavirus outbreak, adopting babies from China have been delayed. It's a heartbreaking reality for two families in Massachusetts who now have to wait even longer to adopt their children from China. The Wide Horizons for Children Adoption Center in Waltham says adoption out of China have been put on hold after the quick spread of the coronavirus created major travel restrictions around the world.
These families have a photo of a child that they've been thinking and dreaming about for the last 6 months who they identify as their son or daughter.
The Adoption Center tells Western Mass News one family was on its way to adopt a toddler in China when the plane was turned around and sent back to the U.S. The other family had their trip delayed altogether.
I think the thing weighing on the families is that they, don't want their child to stay in the orphanage one day longer than they need to.
Adoption officials say the stall in adoptions can take an emotional toll on families who do not want their children to stay in an orphanage just even a day longer. The adoption agency says it believes China will honor the planned adoptions, but it's unclear when that would happen. Live in the studio, Sarah Gurnelli, Western Mass News.
Sarah, thank you for that live report. And with 11 confirmed cases of the coronavirus here in the U.S. as of Tuesday, one of those in Massachusetts, and more than 20,000 confirmed cases worldwide, some people are taking extra precautions and changing their travel plans. Well, Western Mass News spoke to Doyle Travel Center in Chicopee about how the sick season is now impacting the travel season.
I'll tell you, I had a cancellation the other day because of the virus. They're traveling within the United States, but they're still afraid of that connecting point where they were connecting. It was a large airport, and they were afraid of that.
The virus can spread without physical contact. People traveling from China back to the U.S. are being screened for the illness at multiple airports like LAX, Chicago O'Hare, JFK, and Detroit Metropolitan. Doyle Travel Center telling Western Mass News if you are planning an upcoming trip and you're nervous about health risks, buy travel insurance. Turning now to campaign 2020. The head of Iowa's Democratic Party issuing an apology prior to the announcement of caucus results late today.
Troy Price is saying the near 24-hour delay due to a coding error was unacceptable. As of now, more than 60% of the results are in. It shows former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg with 26.9% of the votes. Senator Bernie Sanders is second at just over 25%. Senator Elizabeth Warren is third with just over 18%.
Former VP Joe Biden currently at 15.6%. The only other candidate with double digits is Senator Amy Klobuchar, who had 12.6% at this point. Now in Massachusetts, the primary elections are in less than a month and early voting begins in 20 days. Plus, it's crunch time for people to finish registering to vote.
And city clerks are collecting absentee ballots as well. Western Mass News reporter Caroline Powers has a closer look at how the busy election season is going in Holyoke.
It's important to, get your votes in, and especially if you're not going to be here, not put it on and put it in the back and forget about it.
It's crunch time at the city clerk's office in Holyoke. With the primary elections less than a month away, this year is unique. Holyoke City Clerk Brenna McGee says Massachusetts voters can cast their ballots in both a state and presidential election.
We have elections right around the corner. We have a deadline to register to vote for the presidential primary, which is February 12th. Our office will be open until 8 p.m. next week on that day, just to allow people to get last-minute registrations in. And we have a double election coming up on March 3rd.
Absentee voting has been open in Holyoke for about 2 weeks now. Registered voters can either request an application be sent to them and then they'll turn it in by mail, or they can come down and fill out a ballot at the city clerk's office.
That's for people that are going to be out of town on election day, have a religious belief that they can't make it to the polls that day, or if they have a disability and can't make it to the polls that day, they can absentee vote starting now.
McGee tells Western Mass News they have already seen about 50 absentee ballots turned in. They also have early voting taking place at the end of the month.
Early voting is actually available to any registered voter, so that will be available for the week prior to the presidential primary. You can vote for the special and the presidential 5 days prior to the election, so that will be February 24th through February 28th. It will be offered every day in City Hall from 8:30 to 4:30. Anybody can come in, no excuse needed, to vote. And we also are going to be holding one day, Tuesday the 25th, at the Holyoke Senior Center from 9 to 12. We're going to be doing it there as well, just to make it a little bit more convenient for folks to that might not be able to come to City Hall.
In Holyoke, Caroline Powers, Western Mass News.
New at 6 earlier this morning, Springfield Police Department and other agencies took a stabbing suspect into custody. Police arrested 30-year-old Dwayne Addy inside a home on Sycamore Street. Police say an arrest warrant was out for Addy following an investigation into a stabbing. Police say on January 23rd, Addy stabbed another man after an argument inside a liquor store on State Street. The victim suffered serious injuries and was considered at the time to be potentially life-threatening. Addy is charged with armed assault to murder.